For those of us that love the visceral thrill of horror films, it can be difficult to find something new and exciting amongst the near endless amount of trash that you can find on streaming services. Sure, there's a wealth of spooky content out there to while away the long winter nights, but every so often you might find yourself craving something a little different. For every by-the-numbers slasher film or typical haunted house flick, there's a plethora of weird, wonderful, and criminally underappreciated titles that all horror fans should subject themselves to at least once. Be they Eastern gore epics, strange experimental pieces, or unsung classics of European horror, the films compiled here today are all worth checking out if you're a fan of the scary stuff. They may have not gone down a storm with the masses, or even critics for that matter, but have since earned their place in horror history via the devotion of their highly enthusiastic fan bases and subsequent re-releases on physical media. So with that, I'm Jess for What Culture, and let's look at brilliantly weird cult horror flicks that you should check out immediately. Botten. With acclaim from the likes of Marilyn Manson and Nicolas Cage, there should be no doubt in your mind that Botten is an incredibly strange film. An experimental art piece that began life as a theater production, Botten is a horrific avant-garde nightmare that plays it fast and loose with its narrative and opts to tell its story through visuals as opposed to words. It tackles heady themes such as religion, creationism, and rebirth, as well as exploring philosophical ideas from the likes of Friedrich Nietzsche and Antonin Artaud. There's very little exposition, and viewers are invited along for a grueling journey across a desolate world where everything is barren and hopeless. The events on display are cruel, violent, and just baffling enough to infer multiple different readings. With next to no dialogue, an intentionally harsh and abrasive visual style, as well as a plot that's completely open to interpretation, Botten is certainly not for everyone. Its abstract and experimental nature will be off-putting to most, but for those who enjoy that sort of thing, there's plenty here to satisfy your macabre interests. Jack Frost. The late 90s were a lawless landscape when it came to slasher films. The success of Wes Craven's Scream rejuvenated the waning genre and ushered in all manner of copycats, rip-offs, and oddities. And 1997's Jack Frost is one of the era's most oddball offerings. Not to be confused with the sappy Michael Keaton film of the same name, this Jack Frost is a mean, silly, and raucous good time. It has no intention to scare, but to simply amuse, bemuse, and titillate wherever possible. Because let's face it, who could possibly be scared of a killer snowman? Centering on serial killer Jack Frost, no really that's his name, during a police chase he crashes into a truck containing genetic research material. Said material then causes Jack to dissolve and his gooey remains become one with the snow, but not before swearing revenge on the authorities. He soon reforms as a giant snowman and sets upon a bloody rampage, all in the name of vengeance. It's every bit as ridiculous as it sounds, but a perfect film for when you've got the squad over and more beers than you could possibly finish in one sitting. Repo, the genetic opera. And now we come to the only musical that's on this list, one of my personal favorites, the criminally underrated Repo, the Genetic Opera. An industrial rock opera that tells the story of the nefarious Gene-Co company, an insidious conglomerate in a dystopian world that will loan its customers organs but will gladly tear them out again if payments aren't kept up. We then see how characters from different walks of life across the cyberpunk landscape are personally affected by Gene-Co and its horrific monopoly on the world. Full of colorful characters, catchy songs, and quite possibly the strangest cast ever assembled for a motion picture, Repo is the rare type of film that only comes along every so often. Designed to follow in the footsteps of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the film was a critical and commercial failure upon release, but has since gone on to find love and adoration from fans, and its reputation continues to grow. If you're looking for something to satisfy your love of gore and show tunes, then look no further. There's been two spiritual successes made by the same team in the form of the Devil's Carnival films, but for sheer audacity and blood-soaked bombastic thrills, Repo cannot be topped. Phenomena. Italian maestro Dario Argento is no stranger to the weirder side of horror films. The man has weaved an incredible legacy in the industry with films like Deep Red and the surrealist Art Deco masterpiece Suspiria under his belt. Of all his works, however, the 1985 stalk and slice flick Phenomena is the absolute peak of his strangeness. Set against the backdrop of a Swedish boarding school, Phenomena tells the story of exchange student Jennifer Corvino, played by a pre-Labyrinth Jennifer Connelly, who must use her ability to telepathically communicate communicate with insects to solve a string of murders in the local area. With the aid of local entomologist John McGregor, played by the always incredible Donald Pleasance, and his trained helper chimpanzee Inga, the trio have to move quickly to prevent any more schoolgirls from being beheaded. Yes, you did hear that correctly. The plot is incredibly strange, and those unfamiliar with Italian horror may find it a bit too out there. But Phenomena is a wildly entertaining feast for the senses. With beautiful set-piece murders and a thumping soundtrack consisting of songs by Goblin and Iron Maiden, this is definitely one to add to your collection. Sleepaway Camp. Chances are most people know Sleepaway Camp by name and reputation, but have never actually sat down to watch it. On the surface, it looks like any other Friday the 13th knockoff. Summer camp setting? Check. Cast of horny teenagers? Check. Mysterious killer with a grudge? Check. All the adults and counselors are complete perverts or woefully inept at their jobs? Check and check plus. However, it's only when you dive into Sleepaway Camp that the real weirdness begins to rear its head. Where most other films in the summer camp genre at least attempt to depict a squeaky clean version of the all-American pastime, every frame of this film is dripping with seedy atmosphere that truly sets it apart from its contemporaries. From the grounded, almost documentary-style look to the crass, hyperbolic dialogue that would make John Waters proud, this is unlike any other summer camp slasher you've ever seen. It all culminates in one of the genre's most shocking and well-seeded climaxes that to this day will make every jaw in the room drop. The film holds up well on subsequent watches, and its handful of nasty death scenes and highly quotable dialogue make it a firm favorite in cult circles. In the Mouth of Madness. Perhaps the most overlooked of all John Carpenter's work, In the Mouth of Madness is a seldom-seen gem that never truly gets the praise it deserves. Acting as the final part of his Apocalypse trilogy, alongside The Thing and similarly underappreciated Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness is Carpenter's stab at a Lovecraftian horror, which comes with all of the existential dread and tentacled fish monsters you'd expect. Like most of Carpenter's 90s output, the film didn't fare well at the box office and received mixed reviews at best. Many cited that despite the film's impressive technical aspects, its overly complex narrative and unabashed weirdness held it back. However, those two elements are undoubtedly the reason why the film's reputation has grown in recent years, with contemporary critics singling it out as one of Carpenter's best efforts, as well as the last great film of his career, in spite of some of its flaws. With a newfound rise in Lovecraftian flavored thrillers like A Cure for Wellness and The Color Out of Space doing the rounds, there's never been a better time to check out this unsung treasure, Mystics in Bali. Often touted as the holy grail of Asian horror, Mystics in Bali is hands down one of the strangest slices of Eastern cinema you could ever hope to see. A student named Kathy travels to Bali from America, or Australia depending on which version you see, in order to study black magic. She's fortunate enough to be introduced to a liak, a local sorceress who promises to teach her the dark arts. Kathy soon becomes a pawn in a sinister struggle for power, and all manner of ridiculous and hideous hijinks ensue, bursting at the seams with all manner of supernatural silliness, which when coupled with the breakneck pacing and horrendous dubbing make this a very unique viewing experience. However, it's the now iconic image of Kathy's disembodied severed head, complete with organs still attached, flying through the village attacking people that really cements this film's place in the history books. Mystics in Bali is firmly in the so bad it's good category, standing tall as a confusing yet deliriously entertaining landmark of Indonesian horror, one that's certainly for those with a deep affection for low-budget exploitation nonsense. Society. At one time or another, we've all wondered whether or not we truly belong to the families we've grown up with. Be it a passing thought or a sentiment of frustration, it's a common idea that everyone can relate to on some level. It's this exact same thought process that goes through the head of Bill Whitney when looking at his own eccentric high society family. What starts as a simple suspicion fueled by a tape recording of monstrous sex noises and a rather concerning encounter with his sister in the shower, don't ask, slowly unravels a sinister and deeply disturbing side to his home life that completely turns his world upside down. With his sister's coming out party looming on the horizon, Bill realizes he has to escape the confines of his family or succumb to their unusual ways. Riddled with biting social satire and some of the queasiest imagery put to film, Society is essential viewing for horror fans. It leans a little heavier on the dark comedy than outright horror, but it's gross and unsettling enough to satisfy fans of the genre. Possession. Perhaps the most well-regarded and critically lauded film on this list, Andrei Zulawski's cerebral nightmare Possession is one of the genre's best-kept secrets. The somewhat loose plot follows the relationship between international spy Mark and his wife Anna, who upon Mark's return from a mission reveals she wants a divorce. In an instant, their relationship is shattered, and Anna's behavior becomes increasingly more erratic and disturbing, leading Mark to uncover a wealth of sinister secrets. Beautifully shot, expertly directed, and anchored by two equally fearless and mesmerizing performances from Isabella Asjani and Sam Neill, Possession is simply breathtaking from start to finish. The palpable sense of dread this film conjures up is genuinely disconcerting, oozing with the typical strange allure so often associated with Euro horror, but cranked up to dizzying heights. The plot can seem impenetrable on a first viewing, but repeat visits to this ice-cold chiller will yield new understandings and interpretations as to what it all means. It's a stark and horrifying depiction of a marriage that's gone to pot and the psychological scars that can be brought about by trauma. Simply said, it's a stunning piece of work that anyone with even a passing interest in the genre should see.